Today we'll begin our process of the Community Needs Assessment and begin to develop and move forward with the recreational needs that are needed within the Groton community. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let Becky take us through some of our housekeeping rules. And thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you all can hear me okay. I see a few of you are still joining. If this is your first Zoom webinar, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I know we would prefer to be in person today, but we do appreciate your participation in this new way. We are excited to bring this to you. I want to tell you a little bit about what you may be seeing and how we want you to be involved, because we do want your feedback. So the best way to participate as we go through this presentation, we're going to have polls. And so there'll be little survey questions and they'll pop up on your screen throughout the presentation. If you see one of those polls, go ahead and answer it. But if an option shows up that you don't agree with or you'd like to add to, you can actually use the chat box. So if down at the bottom, you should see a little chat box. If you're on your phone, it may look a little bit different. It may be hiding behind a little button that says more. But if you pull up the chat box, that's where you can engage with us and give us your opinion. And all of your feedback is actually going to be broadcast to panelists. So nothing that you see, other people are going to see. We might read out some responses, but we would welcome your questions. We welcome your feedback, and that chat box and the polls are really going to be the best way for us to get your feedback. Now, at the very end, we are going to have a live Q&A, so we'll be addressing your questions during that time. If something comes up that we can answer right away, we'll do that, but most likely we'll answer it at the very end. Kind of like if you were at a public meeting and we can't answer everybody at once, we'll try to get to you as best as possible. I'm going to do my best to answer and facilitate the chat as best I can. But if there are, if something comes up and we don't answer right away, that's why. If we do happen to have technical difficulties, like one of us gets kicked out of the meeting, another one of us will carry on the presentation. If you have any kind of audio issues or if you can't see it, you can try to exit and rejoin us. You can also join us by phone, and all of that information was in that confirmation email that you received. So one other housekeeping thing is that we want this presentation and we want as much feedback to go to as many people as possible. So we will be recording this conversation and it will be available on the website, and we invite you to share that so we can get as much engagement as possible. And one final thing is that when you ask your questions or if you've got something to add, we would love it if you could kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, and you just have to do this once, but just to say if you're a Groton resident or maybe who you are, that would help us have a little bit more context for any questions that you have. So I think that's it. Lisa, if I didn't cover anything else, please feel free to jump in. But
Sure.
Other than that, we're looking forward to having a great public meeting.
Great. Thank you, Becky. And as everybody knows, this is our new world as we live in it today. And so many of us are communicating through the virtual world. And this is really a unique opportunity for us to still have contact with the community. So want to go through a little introduction of who your Green Play team members are and what we are focused on. I mentioned we've got a 20-year career as being in this business of engagement in parks and recreation planning nationwide. Our headquarters is based in Colorado. However, all of our consultants work remotely. So I'm actually based in North Carolina, and I'll let everyone else that's on our call from our team introduce themselves, and they can tell you a little bit about themselves. But we pride ourselves in diving deep in the public engagement process and the needs assessment process to make sure we're really tapping into what the community really needs. And we'll go through some slides with that. So next on the agenda, I will turn it over to Pat O'Toole. As you can see his picture on the screen.
I am Pat O'Toole. I am a principal with Green Play. Like Lisa, I've been in the public sector of park and recreation, working as a director and assistant director at 4 different agencies, 4 different states, and have been consulting since 1995 65 and have been with Greenplay for 17 of their 20 years. And I'm located in Lawrence, Kansas.
Thanks, Pat. Art.
Hi, good evening. I'm Art Thatcher. I'm also one of the principals with Greenplay, assisting Lisa and Pat with this project. I too spent the better part of 30 plus years as a Parks and Recreation Administrator in the Hampton Roads region of Virginia. So Newport News Shipyard, and so familiar with the relationship between shipyards and communities, and kind of look forward to working on this project with everybody.
Great, thanks, Art. And one of the other team members on our team is the unique thing is we come in. Greenplay is basically a consortium, and we work with other groups and agencies within the local community. Although we are located in our headquarters is in Colorado, as we mentioned, but we are working currently with the team from Peary Associates, and I will let Laura begin with her introduction.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Peary. I'm principal of Peary Associates. We're a multidisciplinary design firm located in New Haven, Connecticut. So we're very familiar with our urban centers in Connecticut and our rural towns as well. We're really happy to be a part of the team. We are landscape architects, interior designers, and community engagement specialists. So we're really happy to be involved with Greenplay on this project.
Great, thanks, Laura. Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa Copps. I also work at Peary Associates. I'm a specialist in health and wellness and in the built environment and sustainability. And I'm really excited to be part of this project as well.
Great, thanks, Melissa. The other two groups that we have as part of our team is Graham Curtis representing DTC, and they are overseeing the recreational engineering and analysis of the Pratt facility, which is located at the old Oral School on the Mystic Education campus there. And then Chris Cares is our team member who will be overseeing the statistically valid survey, which will basically be an invited survey. And I'll dive a little bit deeper into that as we go through the upcoming slides. Our focus within Greenplay is basically to work together in collaboration with organizations who are dedicated to the parks and recreation and open spaces within each of their communities. So we're working closely and with the Groton project team themselves, the staff at the Town of Groton, as we move forward in this process. The vision of the project basically is that we are here to take a deep dive into what the community basically is interested in and needs, and what those needs are for the indoor and outdoor recreation facilities throughout the Town of Groton. We have Peary on board to help us prepare conceptual design for the Pratt Building facility as part of this project and the scope of the project. And then we'll also perform an operational cost and revenue analysis along with the engineering analysis for the infrastructure improvements that that facility will need. To give you some background, those of you who may or may not know, this Mystic School Camp, Oral School campus basically is being purchased by a developer, and the developer has interest in working with the town to renovate with the developer's investment in the renovation process of a building that's on the campus that once served as probably the recreation PE center for those students who attended the facility at that time. They're located in that building as an indoor swimming pool. Obviously, this is no longer a functioning facility. A gymnasium, a 2-lane bowling alley, and a smaller auditorium area, as well as some multi-purpose rooms that are located there. And let's see, am I missing anything? I think, and an old racquetball court. We know a lot about the Town of Groton area and the area in the region. I've been on site twice. Melissa and I have toured the Pratt facility itself, and we met with the staff for the strategic kickoff back in February. So we're familiar with the rich history. We know that the Recreation Services Division offers some great opportunities throughout the entire community, and that one of the key things I think that's helping to drive the development of this particular project at the Oral School is that the population projections are projected to increase slightly with the expansion of electric boats, and the employees that they're hoping to recruit, I think it's in the 7,000 range over the next few years, and wanting to really recruit employees who want to stay in the community and recreate within that community. And another advantage is that we know that there are state parks within the town of Groton, which is an awesome advantage. The Recreation and Parks Department basically has 4 pillars that they focus a lot of their initiatives on. The first being health and wellness, economic activity and development, conservation, and social equity. And you'll see if you have received their program, their Discover magazine programming and all of the opportunities that are there, you'll definitely see their array and how so many of these opportunities touch in those 4 pillars. I mentioned the engagement process. We are here, typically we would be on site performing these conversations and having our meetings face to face, but in the world of technology and the world that we're living in, we're here virtually. So I will share with you how we've come this week, and we have been in the middle of focus group meetings. Tonight's our first public meeting. If you look at the wheel going around, we've had stakeholder meetings and key leadership interviews. The other side of our wheel in engagement is the technology-based outreach, where we work consecutively with the town in making sure that the town is in tune with the process that's taking place. So the staff at the Parks and Recreation Department is doing an awesome job in the promotion through social media outlets. The virtual meeting concept is a reality now. And then I'll talk a little bit about the surveying piece, which is the statistically valid survey that will go out after these meetings take place this week for the collection of information that we've heard. And the survey will go out to randomly selected residents within the town of Groton. And you may receive one and your neighbor may not receive one. This is all done, as I mentioned, through RRC Associates. The unique thing about that is you can complete that. You'll receive that as a hard copy with a self-addressed stamped envelope, so you can complete it the old-fashioned way. Or on that, located within that survey is a code along with the website that you'll be able to go to complete the survey online. And this is all tracked and recorded with IP addresses, so there will not be any duplication of surveying initiatives that would be able to take place at that point. Usually about a week after the invitational survey is available, we offer and open up what's called an open link survey. That open link will be a link through the city's website or the town's website. And you, if you did not receive the invited survey, are welcome to go to that open link survey and complete the same questionnaire basically. And what RRC will do is they'll take both versions of the surveys and the input and formulate a final report with recommendations that we've heard through this assessment process. So this week alone, we've been involved with 40 individuals who have participated in the focus group and stakeholder meetings over the past 3 days, just as you can see in this bottom right-hand corner of the wheel. So one of the questions that we ask and areas that we focus on as we go through this process is, you know, the town is great, and we wanted to hear exactly from those individuals what they're doing so well at and what are their celebrations. And these are some of the top comments that we heard as we went through that process this week. And we heard that the staff is very strong and that the programs are phenomenal and that they're regionally recognized for their programming concepts, where they're creating folks to come into the town for a lot of these events and programs that they're currently offering. We had heard that the recreation department and facilities programs should be an economic driver for the entire town, and help with recruitment for residential communities and folks that will want to stay within the area. The holistic approach to Parks and Recreation Services were some comments that were made in regards to the staff and their vision to provide and to listen to what the community wants, rather than saying no. They're interested in finding out if an existing program could take place, and they're looking and evaluating each of those avenues. They know, we heard that Parks and Recreation improves the quality of life by building a healthy community, the importance of health and wellness within communities, and Parks and Recreation helps to blend both of those in the natural environment as well as within facilities, and that Parks and Recreation builds a the community image overall. Becky, is this where we would like to insert a poll?
We're going to insert the poll under the strengths. So that'll come up next. And just a quick note on that, you'll see a box pop up and you should be able to select one from there. If we don't see responses, I'll launch it again and try again. But if you don't see one that you agree with, or you think that something should be added, that's when you're going to let us know in the chat box your opinion. Thank you.
All right. And then the one other thing that I'd like to mention is at the end with the Q&A or the chats, we will take any information that we hear tonight as well and add it to what we heard through the community stakeholder focus group meetings. And that actually is what I had mentioned will help to formulate that survey moving forward. So we know not everybody's perfect, unfortunately. We weren't created that way, and that there's lots of challenges sometimes and key issues that come along with public parks and recreation nationwide, as we provide these services nationwide. And these are some of the highlights, I guess, or the top things that we heard this week. So I'll go ahead and run through some of these. We heard that funding is a primary concern overall for the town. We heard strongly that there's no swimming pool or public aquatic facility, and that the town is surrounded by water, and the importance of making sure that people live in the town know how to swim, and actually also exposing others to swimming opportunities who may not have that opportunity to participate in waterfront swimming as well. We heard that the cost and pricing for summer recreational opportunities in Groton is high, and that fee-based funding policy should be evaluated. There is my understanding is there's a current athletic field study that's taken place, and we heard that there's not enough field space within the community, and that's some shared space, because I think between the schools and the recreation programs, it kind of, puts a bind on a lot of the opportunities that could exist for the fields. A lot of the facilities are tired and need more improvements, more than what the town has actually done or has been able to do. There was some discussion about there's not a centralized recreation center within the town. And then a unique comment that came across, and you'll see this throughout our presentation today, is that the multimodal connectivity and safe routes between facilities and along roadways is lacking. There's just, in today's age, people are looking at alternative means of transportation, cycling, walking, hoverboarding, whatever it might be, to get from place to place. And even in the workplace these days, that seems to be a priority within communities and greenway development. Cultural arts programming and performing arts, there seems to be a little bit of a lack of that within the community. A lot of restrooms at the outdoor facilities and other areas need upgrades and may not comply with ADA standards, as well as some other things like trails or walkways. The transportation piece is needed for many. There's the public transportation is not available for folks to get to some of these recreation and parks areas. Overall, infrastructure at existing facilities should be evaluated in field conditions facility improvements. So there are challenges such as asbestos in some of the older facilities and drinking water, things like that that were mentioned. One of the other questions we asked is, should the town be providing these type of facilities? So these 5 facilities here, indoor facilities, outdoor facilities, programs, parks, trails, and open space. And overwhelmingly, we received positive feedback that the town should continue to provide and be engaged in all 5 of these roles. And most of those comments were focused on the indoor pool opportunity, trails and connectivity, and outdoor athletic fields. So I think this is where we're going to insert the poll, Beck.
Yes, I just launched it. It may take a moment for it to show up on your screen.
It's actually there.
Okay.
On my end, yep. So folks that are on, do you see the poll on your end? Panelists. It's up. Okay, great. Thank you.
And we're going to leave this poll up as Lisa goes through the strengths, so you'll have time as she's explaining some of these.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'll go ahead and begin. You know, obviously, along with the weaknesses, we like to support the concepts of strengths, and there were quite a bit of those that were mentioned throughout the process. So they basically, the town provides a large variety and diversity of activities for all ages. It's mentioned as a strength. The staff, honestly, was mentioned probably in every focus group at least 1, 3, 5, 10 times at least. The accreditations and certifications that they have, the staff has to bring forward to the department and to the town. And those accreditations, as I mentioned, like the senior center being accredited, they've won awards. So you're very lucky to have such a great feedback on both the full and part-time staff that are out there providing that quality of service in the community. The adaptive programs were inclusion programs. They were all strongly highlighted. Events and festivals. The staff's in tune with the recreation trends are. So that's always important. You want to stay above the trends, or within the trends at least, of what is popular out there. So there could be trends that are popular 10, 15 years ago that are not as popular anymore. And then you look at the opportunities to repurpose facilities or programs that might be out there. And the staff is in tune with that through their national affiliations. They have a can-do mentality. As I mentioned about the holistic approach earlier, they are willing to at least investigate and come forward with an answer of opportunity to be able to offer and really evaluate any suggestions that come their way. They do a lot with a little. Excuse me. Their funding obviously is one of our biggest challenges that we have heard. The senior center, the new senior center, is certainly a great strength. Not a lot of folks knew or understood that the senior center after a certain time of the day is available to the general public for use. But the programming opportunities that are there are certainly well recognized and serve as a strength for the community. The summer camp program, the scholarship program is a strength to have that ability to help pay for underserved areas or participants within the program who might be financially challenged. The golf course we did here as a strength as well. Their partnership, the ability for the department to form those partnerships within the community, the athletic programs, the fall festivals, and the existing trails that they do have all been highlighted as strengths for the department. Becky, is the poll closed?
Go ahead and end the poll now, and I'm going to share the results. And yes, I did see all of you just chose one. So this is your top priority. And you should be able to see those now. And all future polls do have that multiple choice option. So you'll be able to select more than one. Thank you.
All right, so I'll continue to move forward. So taking a look at the new things that could be on the forefront, or programs that the department should consider as they evaluate programming in these recreational needs. There was a lot of comments, and you'll see as well as we go through, but the folks that we talk with are interested in bringing residents and non-residents together for events. There was some discussion that at some point the town used to do some winter activities such as ski trips, things that involved a lot more activity during the winter time, and that was mentioned that they would like to see additional programs created again in that realm. The young adult concept was discussed in reference to the influx of the new future residents at EB boats, and what, attracting and creating programming that is of interest to them. So we mentioned earlier that there's lots of programming opportunities for very young children, and then the seniors, and then that group that's in between has some lack of programming where there could be some additional opportunities created. Discussions about the athletics, to create athletic programs that might be a little bit different, that address different cultural groups such as cricket, sailing, and a few other sports opportunities that might not be being considered. The year-round group hikes, nature tours, and more of a focus on outdoor programming was discussed quite often, and how to incorporate that, within the department. Theatrical musical programs was brought up. There was, at the Pratt facility I mentioned earlier, there is an auditorium in that facility, and if the Pratt facility is going to become a potential project for the town, is that the place where that type of activity could take place. Sailing and other water-based programs and sports, such as windsurfing, has been discussed. Events for teenagers, health and wellness programs, dedicated court space for pickleball, table tennis, rock climbing, adult softball, and then fitness opportunities along walking tracks and trails were all opportunities and programs that folks were interested in. Are we still voting?
The votes have come in. I'm going to share the results again. Can you see it?
Okay, I can see them. Yep. Great. So it looks like 62% of folks are interested in year-round group hikes, nature tours, and outdoor programs. Okay, interesting. So everybody can see these, right, Becky?
They should, yes. So if you can't, let us know in the chat, but
Right.
They may be disappearing in just a moment.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right. So we also, looking at some of these facilities, and what the one thing that I'll say is this is just the needs assessment. So this is not anything that's going to come forward other than with the Pratt facility as far as any clear recommendations for improvements that will be, broken down by costs and operations. These are just basically based on needs. So the improvements that are needed that have been mentioned were the existing community center is run down, and to the topic of discussion of renovating or rebuilding old and or closed school buildings came up because there's school buildings that are closing that kids currently utilize the fields behind or adjacent to that are part of the school, and there was some concern about, well, could we just improve those fields and keep those maintained as part of the Parks and Recreation Department. There was discussion about the town and how the town council members should make Parks and Recreation a priority. In many towns and cities nationwide, Parks and Recreation unfortunately is classified as a non-essential service, but in our world, we believe it's an essential service because it certainly benefits the quality of life and the health and wellness within your community as we know it today, especially because we're not able to go to any other places, but we are able to at least go for a walk in a park at this point nationwide. The renovation of athletic fields has been brought up numerous times, and I think once again that'll come out of the athletic field assessment study that's being done. Improvement and maintenance on trails had been suggested. The Pratt facility, renovate the Pratt facility to offer another facility for Parks and Recreation overall. And then consolidation concept, the senior center is great, and then the conversations that came out is why aren't the other facilities just as good? The consolidation concept focuses on all of the areas within the community and how can everybody benefit from one another, and that the Parks and Recreation Department can help consolidate those concepts into one. Updating the disc golf course. The Sutton Park is in need of some updating. The baseball field behind the community center should be updated and become more playable for usage. Enhancing partnerships and sponsorships for events. And then the discussion about the sustainability and resiliency should be part of the planning efforts for the town in facility development. Okay. Everybody hanging in there and learning all kinds of great things that the town can consider moving forward here. So the suggestion for additional parks and open spaces, trails, and recreational facilities was brought up in our meetings, and obviously that there is a lot of interest within the community for some connectivity pieces and more trails, particularly in the east to west for transportation and connectivity, as I mentioned. The athletic fields once again, and then the new aquatic center. So you'll start to see a pattern here where some things were mentioned earlier as either a strength or weakness, and now they're starting to come in through the suggestion process, and we'll get down as we go through towards the ending slide of what the priorities seem to be as we moved forward. The new community center, a new fitness center, gymnasium space. I think someone put that in the chat a few minutes ago about the need for additional gym spaces. The Pratt Building should be considered to be open to the entire community as a satellite facility, but it's not. There was some discussion about whether or not that's really the right size of a facility for the town. So does the town consider that opportunity through the developer, because the developer will be absorbing the cost of the renovation project for that, and the town would be leasing that facility from the developer at that point. But they're not. There was comments about whether or not that's the right size center, if that's what the town is willing to take on. A theater is needed. More open space and maybe even a town green was discussed, and that could possibly have taken place, or it could possibly take place, in a central part of town. An indoor artificial turf field was discussed. That might be something similar to a gymnasium multi-use gymnasium concept where you would have artificial turf opportunities, whether they be panels or whether it's artificial turf that's rolled up and stored for certain programs throughout, the year for the department. And then just simple things sometimes as just the addition of benches and picnic tables and shelters at parks and along trails have been brought up. And those sometimes are easy, simple pleasers to help the folks in the community feel that their Parks and Recreation department is impacting their health and wellness in the community overall. And then ADA accessibility throughout various amenities, restrooms that might not be suitable for based on the old facilities. I believe the Sutton Park restroom facility has been, been closed for a very long time. And that facility was brought up a couple different times throughout our process this week. Let's see, Beck, do you have anything you want to say? How's everything going on the chatting end?
Yes, we are getting lots of good feedback. Thank you, all of you, for participating in the chat. We just shared the responses from that poll. It looks like the top one was trail connectivity, followed by an aquatic center or indoor pool.
See that, great, okay. So some of the patterns that you're seeing are reflective in what the information that we were able to capture this week. So thank you for sharing those polls and participating. I think the next area we want to talk about is going to be whether or not there were any underserved areas that should be identified by the town. And these you'll see on your screen now that the area around William Seeley School is an area that the town should consider reaching out to. The naval community near Route 12, the area, and maybe considering adding more parks within that area. The young adults and the youth and teens between ages 12 to 18 were discussed as being underserved. And then seniors were brought up, but it wasn't in the context of a bad thing in some areas. It was just, how do we accomplish serving everybody within that realm and making everybody feel part of the department and the activities that are offered. Okay. So the key partners was a question that we wanted to kind of put out there to folks and say, you know what, we know that the town has some great sponsors and some great partnerships, but are they missing anything? Is there any other opportunity that someone could bring forth? And these are some of the comments that were discussed. So the town should be the main economic engine through investment in their parks and recreation facilities, through economic development and planning. And that obviously has a role on parks and recreation. When you're recruiting 7,000 new employees to a community, you want to consider what's going to make them want to stay there. And obviously the investment in the parks and facilities would be an important piece of that. Looking at the existing sponsors and partners, they should continue to be maintained, but maybe some consideration for consolidation for more impacting results should be given some thought. So in other words, instead of going to a large corporate supporter for $1,000 here or $500 here, should the department consider consolidating some of those asks and package it as one or two events or programs, whatever it might be, or even facilities moving forward. Health and wellness initiatives in the community. The medical sector is certainly an area that is being tapped on into nationally. Lots of partnerships are being developed and established, and these are some really large partnerships that are out there. So making sure that we're at the table in the medical sector area and arena, and seeing and tying not just sponsorship monies or things, but also the programming opportunities that exist are phenomenal, that are out there. So there was some discussion about that. Nonprofit collaboration rather than duplication of services. So are there ways for the town to continue or to strengthen any of those partnerships? So that could be with the school system, that could be with the YMCA or any other nonprofit social services organization that's out there. EB Sports Association was mentioned, and as well as some other groups that are within the community, private organizations, Electric Boat, Pfizer, and other local businesses were all discussed. Let's see. So here we are, priorities, and we're going to address some of the concepts that were brought up and what folks thought the priorities for the department should be in the next 5 to 10 years. And just a reminder, this is just one part of the process. So the survey will help. These concepts will be listed within the survey itself, and folks will have the opportunity to prioritize from that perspective as well. So the first one was basically, you can see it, you heard me mention it numerous times, but to build a quality community center, a high quality community center that is the headquarters for the department. The department should probably be in a very recognizable area of town, and the consideration for and the need that you heard tonight in reference to the development of a new community center could be where they could be, should be, or could be where they would be located. One community center is not enough, so there's definitely a need for a 40,000 community, population size community, plus what's coming for a second community center. The need for the increase in funding for the department is a high priority. And the connectivity piece for the multimodal biking and hiking trails rose to the top, as well as the athletic fields. And we heard some discussion about the towns and the uniqueness of the community. You've got the city of Groton, you've got the town of Groton, and Noank and Mystic all kind of tied in there. And that there should be more of a sense of community build, and that Recreation and Parks is probably the organization that helps that happen. We don't have an exact answer yet for that, but it'll come about probably in some of the survey questions that will be developed as to what some suggestions might be. So we've heard that the town operates in silos, and this certainly was something in regards to sense of community that should be discussed and on the radar screen. Additional gymnasiums is a huge need. The facilities obviously are tired. They should be brought up to modern standards, and to eventually create a Parks and Recreation master plan. So this needs assessment will help formulate what those needs are moving forward. And if the town so chooses to decide to take it to the next level, a Parks and Recreation master plan was brought up as a discussion point that the town should definitely consider and begin to implement. Maintaining existing facilities, and don't take anything away, but improve what you have. So in other words, if you have an old building, that those individuals did not want to lose the building, they just wanted to improve the building. The Pratt renovation and the Pratt Building should be used as an indoor-outdoor community gathering area for the department and the town. And then the affordability of programming should be discussed, as mentioned earlier. Okay, Beck, see we got another poll going.
We do. And again, this one's really important. We want to know your top priority. And if you don't see it here, let us know in the chat. We are getting lots of good information. And if you end up having, connections or documents, that we'd like to share, just put in your email so we can get in contact with you after this session. And I'm going to go ahead and end the polling, and we should be able to see the results here in just a second.
Okay.
Do you see it?
And I do see it. Yep.
Perfect.
I see a comment here by Thomas Olson. So I just want to, this is interesting. Basically, EV is almost at 15,000 employees and projected maximum employment by 2027 will be 18,000. So that's interesting and great to hear. And that includes Rhode Island. So obviously the whole region is growing, and the need for a lot of these services is important to help the community move forward. Okay, so the poll's closed. And Becky just went through that, so we will continue onward. Part of the process is obviously understanding what the next steps are going to be. I mentioned previously about the needs assessment and the survey. So everything that we hear today and have heard the last 3 days will be areas that will be put together to help identify the top programs and amenities that will be put into the invited survey, as well as the open link survey. And basically, we started with the strategic kickoff so that you can see this process and schedule and the next steps. We started with the strategic kickoff back in February, and we're now at the point of the community and stakeholder engagement survey piece development, and the needs assessment will continue. You could probably look forward to receiving the survey about the 1st to 2nd week of May, and we will go forward from there with presenting findings, envisioning, and draft, which we are able to capture all of the results of the survey, and then we'll be back to formulate and draft and the action plan and final plans to the town at that point. We're still in the process of really fine-tuning some of the timeline, but at this point we're moving forward and hopefully going to have some great results to provide to the town and to you all as residents, as helping to be advocates of that. Okay, so great comment in reference to the survey. So folks that might have joined the webinar a little late, this process will be available. Becky, do you want to kind of give that rundown of how the process was be available? Laura mentioned that the survey, so I'll go ahead and address that issue. Surveying will take place, as I had mentioned, to some folks early on through this needs assessment process, and you will receive an invited survey hard copy in the mail that will have a code located on that survey for you to be able to complete that survey online. These will be sent to randomly selected individuals throughout the town of Groton. And you might receive one, your neighbor might not receive one. However, the folks who aren't on the randomly selected list will still have the opportunity to give their input through the open link survey, which will be posted, and the town will promote that to their website. Okay, so I'm at the point now for us to discuss any questions or comments.
We'll give you all a couple minutes just to write in any questions that you have into that chat box. And it looks like one of the Groton staff, I can't tell if that's Jerry or Mark.
Jerry.
Okay, perfect. If you'll go ahead and address that one question, the floor is yours.
Okay, so we had a question from Thomas Olson about how this is going to relate to the master planning efforts that have been completed in the past with the master plan in 2009 and the 2004 Trails Master Plan. This is correct. There are a lot of those items on those plans that have not been addressed yet. Much of what we see here today in the feedback you've just witnessed are those same items that were noted in the master plan and the Trails master plan. So it's not like those issues went away. Those issues have resurfaced, and I guess our hope is that they will be addressed in the coming years.
Okay. I see a question here in reference to the economic contribution that outdoor activities provide to the town. Part of this process is a demographics and market analysis for the town and trends. So we will identify that as part of the final study and documents.
And I'll answer a little bit on that too, because I'm actually doing the demographics and trend study. And we know that outdoor recreation is becoming an industry driver, an economic driver. And so there are actually recent reports that provide numbers on a state scale, on a national scale, and then we can pull data related to the local level about that. So we'll get into that, and maybe that will be featured in the findings presentation.
Okay. Let's see. The guidelines and boundaries provided to us by the Town of Groton. So we have been working closely with the GIS department for the town in developing this. So I think the question is basically how will this work dovetail into the economic development work? So the economic development department has been at the table in these discussions. Paige Bronk was involved with us, and I'll defer to Mark or Jerry to answer any questions that might be related to the town and these boundary questions. Are they able to?
So Lisa, this is Jerry.
Yep,
there's a lot of questions, and we're just trying to keep up with them. There was a question about the immediate plans for the Noank School Park property.
Yep.
We do have a community garden that Groton Parks and Recreation is operating and selling or renting plots. But in terms of any improvements or anything else at the site, the parks crew is just maintaining the open grassy area, and we have the community garden. So that's the only thing that's happening with the Noank School Park right now.
Thank you, Jerry. Let's see.
Another question we had is, will you share best-in-class examples of recreation facilities and operations with us in a future communication? So we certainly will. That goes into, number one, the trends report, but then also we'll pull any relevant data and make sure that it applies here based on what we heard in the survey and in this feedback that you're providing.
Right. Okay. Are there any more polls, Becky, that you had, or comments?
I'm going to go ahead and launch one other poll that just asks how long that you've lived here. That's going to help us to understand your perspective.
Great, thanks.
We'll just take a couple more minutes for Q&A. So if you have any last minute questions, go ahead and let us know.
Lisa, this is Jerry with Parks and Rec again. We have a question about any models that identify the economic contribution of outdoor activities provided to the town. We do some of those surveys. We conduct some of those surveys. Most of the time it's actually on site. We've done some of those surveys most recently with a Shenecosset Golf Course and what the economic impact for people who come into the town to play golf. Surveys that are distributed to golfers. We also have, from time to time, done some like hard copy participant kind of interception interviews at events where we can ask a few questions of people and get some of the data there. That's traditionally kind of a hard thing to do at big outdoor type activities of getting the attention of people who are there for other purposes to answer some survey questions. But yeah, those are some ways that we do that.
let's see, the next one of the questions I see is, does the developer builder at the Mystic Education Center have any recreational plans for the site that will dovetail into existing plans? I would say that the developer has presented plans, and Jerry and Mark, you can jump in here maybe after I mention this, but the developer has presented plans to the town council. My understanding is that some of those plans are in review. Nothing, I don't think, too drastically has changed, other than maybe a relocation of a few things like a parking lot. Do you want to answer that question, Jerry? Or Mark?
Yes, the developer has expressed interest. The idea is that the developer will, at least from the Pratt Building, develop the Pratt Building with the intention for Groton Parks and Rec to hopefully operate the building for the benefit of those people at the new development, and also for the rest of the community. So I think what we're doing here tonight and trying to find out which of the community needs that are that percolate up to the top, which ones of those things that we might put into the Pratt Building as a place to put those, that's the developer, I think, would be very interested in that information. So as they're going through to develop their plans, knowing what the community wants in the Pratt Building would be a big step forward for them.
Right, and I might let Laura or Melissa talk a little bit about the site itself and some of the questions that are being answered with some connectivity questions to within the development and then that Pratt facility.
Hi, this is Laura. I'll take just a couple
Sure.
high-level questions, because part of what we're trying to gather now is what the town would like to see perhaps in that Pratt facility, and merge that with the characteristics of the facility to see what would make the most sense. We do know in the master plan for the development right now, they are considering a series of trails that lead from the Mystic Education Center site down to the river. And so we'll try to integrate that. There has been some interest in indoor-outdoor connections at the Pratt Building, and perhaps expanding or connecting interior activities with exterior activities there. I know the Mark and his crew have talked about a connectivity study so that folks can get safely from the Pratt facility right to downtown as the crow flies. It's very short. So is there a way to create on the ground connections there that would make it more accessible for larger parts of the community? So those are the things that we're taking in information now, and hope to be able to then study in our concept design options for the Pratt facility.
Great, thanks, Laura. Jerry, you want to take that question in reference to the turf fields?
Sure. Right now, as Lisa mentioned in the presentation, that there is an athletic fields task force that was created by the town council that is out there studying field needs for both the schools and Parks and Rec, and what types of fields are needed. So I know that just being a part of that task force, that there is considerable interest in developing an artificial surface athletic field or fields in the town. So that process is underway right now, and it's being handled by an athletic fields task force.
Okay, thank you. So there's in reference to the survey, Becky, are you okay with me responding to that question?
Yes, I'm not sure if you just saw, we did try to respond. The question was how many people will most likely be surveyed with the statistically valid survey.
And it looks like there's about 3,500 residents for this size community that will be involved in that survey. And we'll just confirm that for future references. Okay. Any other questions or comments as we go forward here? Wow, we must have done a really, really good job in providing that information. Okay, so moving forward, I think our next steps are going to be, well, everybody, we can take a look at this, the polling for the residents. So it looks like about 37% of you all have lived within the community for 20 plus years. So that says a lot for the community as we go through this process and evaluate the needs, and then also address the new residents that will be attracted to coming in. Let me read some of these other questions. Jerry, go ahead. Jerry, were you going to answer a question in reference to?
Yeah, we actually had it here. One of our folks asked a question on the Q&A button down at the bottom of the screen instead of the chat. So it was a question about how improvements in bike paths, primarily in the east-west directions, are going to be included in the future. Yeah, that is something that has been long identified as a need in the town. East-west transportation for people on bikes or on foot is a problem. And most recently there was some work done at the Thomas Road to make that a little bit wider, but there still needs to be additional work, and that actually is included in the Bike, Pedestrian, and Trails Master Plan from 2004. One of those things that's been around for over a decade. So that's not a new thing, and that's something that we hope to address in the future.
Great. So we had a great idea to share to ask you all, and you can just enter this into the chat, but basically, how are you currently using Parks and Recreation as it stands today? If you would, just enter your comments into the chat. I know some of the folks that I had talked to in some of the stakeholder meetings, their children have outgrown the program. However, they're still very interested and engaged in the department. So here we go. We see outdoor trails and running paths. We'll give this a second, then I'll ask another question. And Jerry, one question here is in regards to Bluff Point. I don't know if you see that, but can you talk a little bit about the ways that the town collaborates with the state parks in the area?
Yeah, certainly. We have Bluff Point State Park, we have Haley Farm, and we also have the Groton Monument, Fort Griswold. So yeah, we actually, from time to time, we use the state parks for some of our programs. But in terms of actual collaboration, the state parks is obviously a separate organization. Those parks are generally passive use parks, so there isn't a lot of programming that goes on there, but we recognize that they're there, and we try to make appropriate connections with folks and to highlight the uses to the public so that they know that they're there.
Great. Okay, I just want to go back and clarify. There'll be 3,000 surveys that'll go out to randomly selected folks in the Groton community. Okay. So lots of you, looks like you use a lot of trails, a lot of trail usage here. Dog park, the disc golf course, and some classes. So great feedback. Thank you all for providing that. And oh wow, someone learned how to ski from a Parks and Recreation Department 20 years ago. So that outdoor concept of winter sports obviously comes into play as far as a recommended program. Great. Yep, we see that a lot of folks have outgrown, their families have outgrown it. So the consideration towards programming for that age group is certainly viable. Okay, so do we want, Becky, what would you recommend as far as any other continuing chatting questions?
At this point, if you have any other feedback, now is the time to let us know in the chat. We'll be going back through, we had so many comments and so many questions that we tried to respond to you all, but I know we didn't see everybody. So we're gonna go back and make sure that we gather all of this data, and it will go into not only the next findings presentation, which we hope you'll join, but also it will go into the survey if we hear, a lot of people agree with you. So we appreciate all of your feedback. And if, once this is on the website, we highly recommend that you share it with all of your networks so that more people learn about this process and can provide their engagement as well. And at this point, if there's not anything else from Jerry or Mark that you'd like to add in, we'll just keep the webinar open for the next 5 minutes or so. And you can continue to add your comments in the chat section here.
Right. And the one thing I wanted to follow up with is in reference to the findings presentation that was on the previous slide here regarding the timeline. And so once we have gathered the information from the survey and all the needs assessment process, we will be back to present the findings, and that'll be open a public, this public meeting number 2 that we'll be presenting. We'll meet with the staff, we'll meet with the general public to say, hey, this is what we heard, is everything on track? And we will continue to move forward with the finalization of the plan at that point. So be on the lookout for that meeting date once it's posted, and the town will, I'm sure, inform you all. And the other fact that I'd like to recommend is that you all are certainly here today because of your advocacy, of your interest in Parks and Recreation within the town. And I hope that some of you joined because you might not be that familiar with it as well, and learned something today of what we had heard over the last 3 days. So we've had roughly about 30 people participate in this meeting today. So it was a great surprise, considering this is the first public open meeting that you guys have had. And you can see on your screens now that we want to thank you for your time and consideration as they move forward, and encourage everybody to stay safe and healthy. And hopefully in a few more months or weeks, we'll be able to all be somewhat back into a normal routine of celebrating what Parks and Recreation is doing out there. So thank you for your time. And as Becky said, we'll leave this open for 5 more minutes or so. And then you see the contact information. Feel free to reach out to me via email or Mark as the local contact, and we will be happy to reach back out to you. I do have one other question for Jerry or Mark, is the timing of this, the information that comes about, when that would be available to the, and Becky as well, for you all to post the meeting, so that folks will know.
We're off tomorrow, so I would think we would be able to post it, as soon as it's available, probably Monday or Tuesday.
Right. Okay. Becky, what is that? What are your thoughts from our end?
I'll probably be able to get it over to them tomorrow, so I would say check early next week, and it should certainly be on the website.
Great.
And
we will have the
also,
slides.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah, the slides will be available as well. We will send them to the town.
And the website that we're talking about will be grotonrec.com.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Well, if you have to leave, thank you for your time, and we look forward to hoping our paths all cross at some point, and maybe we'll be face to face next time we're there to present the findings. So have a great evening and stay safe and healthy.